There are moments that never should have been remembered seconds before life ends, when fear feels thicker than air itself. Some stories don't need a witness to be true. They echo through empty rooms, through places where the air never feels clean again. Tonight, we'll step into 5 of those stories. Each one begins ordinary, a house, a journey, a decision, and ends with silence captured in the final breath of someone who thought they were safe. These are not legends or nightmares from books. These are the kind of horrors that unfold in real time, in quiet spaces, in flickers of light we never notice until it's too late. So turn off the lights, silence the noise around you, and listen carefully, because every story you're about to hear ends the same way, with death and the moment right before it. If you think you're ready, let's begin. Today, we are entering 5 real horror stories, recorded moments before death. Our first story begins with a man who believed solitude could save him. But what he found alone in the mountains was something that never wanted to be found. Ethan Clark wasn't running from the world. He was running from its noise. After years buried in city static, sirens, conversations, endless notifications, he craved quiet. When he found an isolated cabin sitting above a sea of fog in the northern ranges, it felt like peace carved into the earth itself. The road that led there was nothing more than a ribbon of broken gravel. His phone lost signal an hour before he arrived. For Ethan, that was the point. No one could reach him. No one could ask for anything. The cabin was old but solid. Pine boards, a single lantern, and windows that looked down into the white blur of mist below. The first day passed like a breath held too long, strange, light, silent. He read, he wrote, he listened to the hum of wind through the boards. By night, fog swallowed the forest completely, leaving only the sound of distant branches cracking, like knuckles turning in the dark. Ethan convinced himself it was just temperature and trees. Yet every few hours, that sound returned, always 3 cracks, always followed by nothing. On the second morning, he found footprints outside. Not his. Small, narrow, pressed deep into the wet soil beside the steps. They led halfway into the fog and disappeared. He told himself a hiker might have passed before dawn, though there were no other cabins within miles. By the third night, sleep refused him. He lay on the wooden floor, eyes fixed on the ceiling's shifting shadows. The lantern flickered once, twice, then steadied. Outside, the fog moved like slow breath against the glass. And then he heard it again, 3 cracks, pause, then 2 more, closer this time. Ethan rose. His body felt heavier than it should. He stood by the window but saw nothing, only the swirling white. He lifted the lantern toward it. The light reached no further than a few feet before dissolving. Then, a shape. For a fraction of a second, he thought he saw the outline of a person standing still, facing the cabin. He stepped back. The shape didn't move. He blinked and it was gone. The rational part of him whispered explanations. Fog, distortion, reflection, exhaustion. He forced himself back to bed. But the cabin was different now, quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful. The silence seemed to press inward, waiting for him to move first. At dawn, he packed his bag. Enough rest, he told himself. Enough solitude. He would hike down before the fog thickened again. But when he opened the cabin door, the path he'd driven up on no longer existed. The fog had devoured everything. Only white nothingness lay beyond the porch. He waited, hoping sunlight would burn it away. Hours passed. The fog never shifted. By evening, he tried calling out. His voice vanished after a few feet, swallowed whole. He went back inside and lit the lantern again. That's when he noticed the photographs. They weren't there before, 6 of them hanging crookedly along the opposite wall. Each was framed in cracked glass. Each showed a man standing at the same porch he had just stepped from. Different faces, different years, but all the cabins were the same. And in every photo, the fog behind the men seemed to shape a faint outline, something tall, blurred, reaching. Ethan couldn't breathe. He approached slowly, studying the faces. The last photo looked recent. The man wore a red flannel shirt. Ethan was wearing the same one now. He turned, half expecting someone behind him, only the sound of wind. Night came faster than usual. The fog pressed against the windows as if testing the glass. He set the lantern in the center of the room and sat beside it, knees pulled close. The cabin creaked as though another weight had settled on the floorboards. 3 cracks sounded again, this time from inside the walls. He froze. The sound repeated, crawling along the wood, moving closer to the back door. He wanted to run, but where? Into endless fog. Instead, he lifted the lantern and stepped toward the noise. The light shimmered across the kitchen, across the doorway leading to the cellar. He hadn't noticed that door before. Its handle was cold metal, rusted but damp. From beneath it, a slow exhale, air moving upward, something breathing. He tried to step back, but his feet didn't obey. Every instinct screamed, "Don't open it," but his hand moved anyway, trembling as he twisted the latch. The door opened onto darkness deeper than anything he had ever seen. No stairs, just a drop, and at the bottom, faintly visible red flannel. A shape staring up with his own face. The lantern fell from his hand. The flame burst, then vanished. No one ever found Ethan Clark. Weeks later, a rescue team reached the cabin. It stood untouched above the fog. On the porch, they found a single photograph lying face down. When they turned it over, it showed Ethan standing at the cabin's door, holding a lantern, the fog behind him curling like fingers around his shoulders. If this story chilled you, the next one may unsettle you even more, because some places don't wait for visitors, they come looking for them. If Ethan's story was one of isolation, the next begins in a place that should never have felt lonely, a city apartment, full of noise, laughter, and the hum of life. Yet for Mia Keller, apartment 12B was where silence began to whisper back. The building was nothing remarkable, an aging tower surrounded by neon light and traffic, its walls thin enough to hear arguments through. When Mia moved in, she was drawn by its cheap rent and the way sunlight touched the living room in perfect gold every morning. She had no reason to think the apartment had a history, no reason to think it remembered every person who had lived there before her. The mirror came with the place. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, framed in tarnished brass, leaning slightly against the hallway wall. The landlord said it was vintage. Part of the apartment since the 1950s, too heavy to move. At first, Mia liked it. The way it caught light, the soft distortion that made reflections look dreamlike. But within the first week, she noticed something wrong. Every night when she passed by it before bed, she saw her reflection lag, as if her movements took a fraction of a second longer to catch up. She laughed it off, thinking it was fatigue, poor lighting, or the glass itself being uneven. Then came the lights. From her bedroom, she could see the hallway faintly illuminated by the city outside, always dim, soft orange. But some nights, she would wake to find it glowing faint blue, flickering like something was moving between her and the window. She began leaving the hallway light on, thinking it would help. It didn't. On the 4th night, while brushing her teeth, she glanced at the mirror and noticed a dark smudge across its center. She wiped it clean, but it wasn't on the surface. It was inside the glass, faintly poolsing, like smoke trapped beneath ice. She stared longer than she should have. The smudge began to take shape, long, blurred, almost human. She stepped back, breath shallow. The outline didn't move. Then the reflection of her bathroom light flickered, though the bulb above her never dimmed. Mia shut the bathroom door that night and slept with the hallway light off, but the faint blue glow still seeped through the cracks. Days passed. She ignored it, until the morning she realized her reflection had changed. She stood before the mirror, coffee in hand, hair unbrushed, but in the glass, her reflection's head was slightly tilted, not the same way hers was, and its lips were parted, though hers were not. The coffee fell from her hand, shattering on the tile. When she blinked, the reflection was normal again, except for the faint fog on the glass, shaped like a breath. She began covering the mirror with a sheet. It worked for a few nights, until one morning she woke to find the sheet crumpled on the floor. The glass shone clean, brighter than before. Then came the recordings. Her phone, which she used to record voice notes for work, began saving files she hadn't made, small, 3-second clips, all titled M12B. Every file contained the same low static, followed by a faint breath and then silence. She deleted them, reset her phone, even replaced it. The recordings kept reappearing, always 3 seconds long, always at 3:12 a.m. That was when sleep stopped visiting her. She'd lie awake, watching the faint reflection of the mirror from her bed, waiting for it to change. It always did. Sometimes the glass rippled, as if someone pressed a hand against the other side. Sometimes she saw shadows moving where there should have been none. Once, she swore she saw her own body lying in bed behind her, perfectly still, while she stood frozen before the mirror. One night she decided to end it. She dragged the mirror into the living room, intending to break it. She picked up a hammer and struck, but the sound it made wasn't glass shattering. It was hollow, like striking metal. When she looked again, the surface was smooth, unmarked. She struck again, and this time something cracked, not the mirror but the wall behind it. From the fissure, black dust poured out, coating her hands. It smelled of burnt wood. Then she saw it. Her reflection no longer mirrored her at all. It stood upright as she leaned close, its face expressionless, its eyes darker than her own. Slowly, the reflection lifted its arm, pressing a palm against the glass from the inside. Her breath stopped. She stepped back, but the mirrored hand followed, pushing harder until the surface of the glass began to ripple outward. The hand pressed through, not shattering, not breaking, just sliding out as though the barrier was liquid. Cold fingers gripped her wrist. The next morning, neighbors reported hearing faint scratching from inside apartment 12B when the landlord entered. He found the apartment empty. The mirror stood perfectly upright, no dust, no cracks, and in its surface, a faint reflection of a woman's silhouette standing in the hallway. Weeks later, a new tenant moved in. The landlord never mentioned Mia, but the first night he slept there, his phone recorded a file he hadn't made, 3 seconds long, 3:12 a.m. If you thought the cabin's silence was suffocating and the mirror's reflection unsettling, then what happens in our next story will haunt you long after you close your eyes, because some fears don't wait for darkness. They come alive when the light refuses to stay. Psychological as the series progresses, this one will feel heavier, more suffocating, the kind that lingers after it ends. Some places aren't haunted by ghosts, they're haunted by sound. For Daniel Reed, that sound began as a low hum in the distance, a vibration that seemed to come from nowhere, yet filled everything around him. He first heard it while driving home late from a night shift. The highway stretched endless across the valley, lined with broken lamps and forgotten exits. Around 2:17 a.m., his car radio began to tremble with static. He turned the knob to silence it, but the hum remained, not through the speakers, but through the air itself. It pulsed like breath, a frequency too deep to name, settling into his bones. Ahead, a tunnel cut through the mountain, its entrance framed in concrete, its inside swallowed by darkness. The hum grew louder as he approached. He slowed, headlights barely slicing through the pitch. Inside, the walls seemed alive, wet, glistening, vibrating faintly with the sound. Halfway through, the radio turned itself back on. A voice flickered through the noise, not words, just a rhythm, perfectly matching the hum. He pressed the brakes, the car stopped, the hum did not. It rolled through the tunnel in waves, climbing in tone, almost human now, almost breathing. Daniel gripped the steering wheel. He could feel it, a pulse underneath the rubber, syncing with his heartbeat. For 1 second, he thought the tunnel itself was alive. When he exited on the other side, the hum cut off instantly. The silence hit him so hard it felt physical. He told himself it was machinery, maybe the ventilation system. But as he looked in his rearview mirror, the tunnel mouth seemed darker than before, a black circle against the night, still vibrating faintly even in silence. By morning, he'd nearly forgotten it, but when he turned on his phone, a new recording sat at the top of his list. Timestamp 2:17 a.m. Length 13 seconds. He pressed play. Nothing but that same low hum. For days, it followed him. He'd hear it faintly beneath the sound of the refrigerator, under the hum of the ceiling fan, behind his own breath. He stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the tunnel not as it was, but as it seemed to want to be. Endless, alive, humming softly in the dark. He played the recording again and again, searching for a pattern. On the 13th play, something new emerged, not just hum, but whispers, layered deep inside. Words he couldn't make out. He amplified the sound, filtered the frequencies, and realized the voices were counting. 1, 2, 3. The count never reached beyond 12. He didn't know why, but he began driving back. When he reached the tunnel, daylight was fading. The hum wasn't there, not yet. The silence felt heavier this time. The concrete walls looked wet again, though no rain had fallen. He parked outside, stepped out, and walked toward the mouth. With every step, the air thickened, pressing against his chest. A low vibration crawled up his legs. He stopped a few feet before the entrance. Inside, a faint light flickered, as though something metallic reflected his movement. He couldn't tell if it was a puddle or an eye. The hum began again. It started softly, then deepened like an engine waking beneath the earth. The ground trembled. The numbers whispered again, faint but distinct. 1, 2, 3. His phone buzzed. A new recording had started automatically. Timestamp 6:42 p.m. Length recording. He should have run, but the sound drew him forward. The hum seemed to breathe with him, calling him inside, promising an ending he didn't understand. The tunnel swallowed the light almost instantly. He used his phone's flashlight. The beam fell flat against the walls, illuminating wet streaks that looked less like water, more like veins. The air was hot, pulsing. At exactly 12 steps in, the whispers stopped. The hum grew sharper, almost metallic. His flashlight flickered once, twice, then stayed on, but the walls were gone. There was no tunnel now, no walls, just black space stretching endlessly. The hum surrounded him, echoing from every direction. Then faintly, his own voice. Counting. He spun, shining the light behind him. The tunnel mouth was gone. Only darkness remained. His voice echoed again, closer now. The hum rose, vibrating through his ribs, climbing higher until it became a scream he couldn't hear but could feel. Then silence. 2 days later, the highway patrol found Daniel's car parked by the tunnel entrance. The engine was still running. His phone lay on the passenger seat, screen cracked, battery at 2%. Inside it, a single recording. Duration, 12 minutes and 17 seconds. The file begins with footsteps, echoing through what sounds like a narrow corridor. The hum starts faintly, building into a roar. Then it stops, and for exactly 12 seconds there is nothing. At 13 seconds, the sound of breathing returns, but the voice on the recording is Daniel's. It counts slowly, 1 to 12, then whispers something just before the file ends, a single word, spoken in his tone but reversed. When reversed back, it says, 13. The tunnel was sealed 2 weeks later after multiple reports of vibration and machinery malfunctions. Yet, even now, truckers who pass that road at night claim their radios sometimes turn on by themselves around 2:17 a.m., playing nothing but that same low hum, and a faint voice whispering numbers under the noise. If this story unsettled you, wait until you hear the next one, because sometimes horror doesn't wait outside. Sometimes it hides inside you, waiting for the moment you stop believing it's real. There are places where silence doesn't mean peace. It means something is listening. In 2013, the staff of an old psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of Boston began to notice something strange on the night shift security feeds. A shape, a flicker, a figure that didn't belong. The hospital was closing down, one wing at a time. Most of the patients had been transferred, a few discharged. Only one ward remained operational, Ward C, where the most unstable patients once stayed. The wing was supposed to be empty now. But on the monitor at exactly 3:12 a.m., a figure appeared motionless, sitting in a wheelchair by the end of the hall. Head tilted slightly downward, hands resting calmly in her lap. The night guard, a man named Eric, thought it was just leftover equipment or an old mannequin. But then the figure moved. The head lifted. The wheelchair rotated slowly until it faced the camera directly. Eric blinked, and in that blink the chair was empty. The footage was reviewed the next morning. The timestamp was there. The shadow was there. But the figure's face just a blur of static, like the tape itself refused to remember. The hospital's administration brushed it off. Electrical interference, they said. Glitches. But within a week, one of the cleanup workers claimed to have seen the same wheelchair in the hallway, only this time it was wet, as if someone had rolled it through a puddle that wasn't there. He quit that night. Still, maintenance continued. The building had to be cleared. Cameras kept rolling, doors were locked, and by late October, Ward C was scheduled for demolition. But a week before that, someone decided to explore it one last time. The video that surfaced later, the one investigators found half-corrupted, belonged to a group of local urban explorers. They entered through a broken window, carrying flashlights and a GoPro. The air was heavy with dust, and somewhere deep inside the hall, a faint tapping echoed, rhythmic and distant. They thought it was a water pipe. It was. The footage is jittery, cutting between flashlight beams and glimpses of graffiti. Then, at the 7-minute mark, they pass by a room labeled Patient 19. The door is ajar. A faint scraping sound comes from inside. When the light hits the wheelchair, the same one from the hospital feed, it's turned toward the door, and there's a wet handprint on the armrest. They laugh nervously, whisper something about setting it up for a thumbnail, and move on. But the camera catches something behind them, a shadow in the doorway, just for a fraction of a second. When they reach the end of the hall, the tapping stops. Silence. Then a loud metallic clang. The door they came through slams shut. The flashlight jerks around, scanning the corridor. The wheelchair is gone. From this point, the footage becomes chaotic. Breathing, footsteps, the camera spinning. In a single frame, you can see the hallway stretching unnaturally long, as though perspective itself bends away from them. Then nothing. No screaming, no cut, just static. Police found the GoPro days later in the hospital's basement tunnel system, still recording. The last minute of the file, though, doesn't show the explorers at all. Instead, it shows the security office, the one from the main building, still operational. And sitting in front of the monitors is a figure in a wheelchair, head bowed, hands still. Except the hospital had been sealed that night. The power shut off. When authorities reviewed the timestamps, they matched perfectly with the night the building's main breaker tripped at 3:12 a.m. The demolition went ahead weeks later, but construction crews refused to stay after dark. They reported tools moving on their own, footsteps echoing through sealed floors, and one man swore he saw a reflection in a window that wasn't there. A woman sitting behind him, her head tilted, her eyes vacant. The footage from that night, the one investigators eventually leaked, remains online. Most say it's fake, but those who have watched it claim that near the end, when the static flickers, you can see her still sitting in that chair. Only this time her eyes are open, and she's watching the camera. Every night at 3:12 a.m., new uploads appear on random abandoned accounts. Always the same timestamp, always the same frame. The empty hallway of Ward C with a faint shape in the distance. Some swear they've heard whispers under the static, a voice repeating something over and over, but no one been able to clean the audio enough to tell what it says. Experts say it's compression noise. Paranormal researchers say it's a haunting echo, the last trace of a patient who died in that hospital and refused to leave. But there's one final detail that never made the reports. When police logged the recovered GoPro, they noticed something strange in the metadata. The file name had changed itself before being saved. It read, Patient 19 Stillher. If you play it today, the first few seconds are silent, until faintly, you hear the slow creak of a wheelchair rolling toward the mic. And then a whisper. No one who's played it through has ever said what the voice says next. Maybe it's better that way, because some stories shouldn't be heard, only felt. Some footage isn't cursed because of what it shows, it's cursed because of who's watching. In 2019, a freelance videographer named Daniel Frost began an editing job that would become the last thing he ever worked on. The client was anonymous, the payment high, and the instructions simple: clean up and color correct a set of archival tapes. There were 5 tapes in total, unmarked, old, and transferred from analog to digital. The client only left one note: do not mirror the footage. Daniel assumed it was a technical detail. He didn't question it. But when he loaded the first tape into his editing software, something felt wrong immediately. The waveform stuttered. The playback bar lagged. The video itself was mundane. A woman sitting in a white room staring at the camera. No sound, no movement, just her eyes fixed forward. Daniel ran a few filters, adjusted levels, and noticed something strange. The background light flickered inconsistently, almost like a pulse, not in the footage but behind it. He ignored it, saved the file, and went to the next tape. Tape 2 showed the same woman, but now her expression had changed, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wider. Her head twitched, almost imperceptibly every few seconds. The light pulse continued. He checked the metadata. Each file had a timestamp from decades earlier, 1986. By the third tape, Daniel began noticing something impossible. Whenever he paused playback, the frame didn't freeze. The woman's eyes kept moving barely, like she was aware of him. He blinked, rubbed his face, thought it was fatigue. But then, when he mirrored the clip accidentally while adjusting aspect ratios, her reflection smiled. The real frame didn't. He immediately hit undo. The smile disappeared. When he tried to rewatch, the file corrupted. A new version appeared in his directory, Mirror 1, MP4. He hadn't created it. Curious but unsettled, he clicked play. The mirrored footage loaded the same woman, but now she was closer. Her face filled the frame, eyes dark, unblinking. And behind her, faintly visible through the static, was a shape. Human but blurred, standing perfectly still. He deleted the file, or thought he did. Minutes later it reappeared, renamed again, Mirror 2. He disconnected his external drive, shut off his monitor, and went to bed. His recording webcam, which he sometimes used for tutorials, was still connected. At 3:08 a.m. it turned on by itself. The next morning, Daniel found a new folder on his desktop labeled Work Session. Inside were 3 files, each one a screen recording of his editing software from the night before. Except he never recorded them. The footage shows his workspace, his cursor moving across the timeline. Then, halfway through, his reflection in the monitor begins moving before he does. A single frame freezes on his reflection's face, smiling faintly. He stopped working after that, told friends he wasn't sleeping, said the tapes were off, like they were reacting to him. Days later, he contacted the anonymous client, no response. The number disconnected. But that night, neighbors called the police after hearing strange noises from his apartment. a constant loop of static and distorted speech. When authorities entered, the apartment was dark. All monitors were on, flickering with a split-screen display. The same woman on one side, Daniel on the other, both staring directly into the camera. There were no signs of forced entry. The footage recovered from his hard drive told the rest. The last file, titled Final Render, is 28 minutes long. The first half shows Daniel trying to film a short log, his camera fixed on his reflection in the monitor. He doesn't speak, just stares, eyes red, exhausted. At the 14-minute mark, the reflection blinks, but Daniel doesn't. Then slowly, the reflection raises its hand. Daniel's hand stays still. He leans forward, staring into the screen, breathing unevenly. The reflection starts to smile again. When he finally reaches to touch the monitor, the lights flicker, and the reflection moves first. The camera feed cuts to static, then briefly reappears showing Daniel standing behind his own chair, expression blank. But there's no one in the chair anymore. Authorities found his body 3 days later in front of his desk, still recording. No trauma, no sign of struggle, just a frozen frame on his screen showing the reflection smiling. The police assumed it was a psychotic break. The files were logged as evidence, then sealed. Months later, the building's new tenant reported their own computer turning on by itself at night. Always the same time, 3:08 a.m. When they checked the video cache, a single clip appeared, a reflection of them sitting at the desk, eyes wide, unmoving. The file name, Mirror 3. Experts claim it's a deepfake virus that replicates visual input and syncs it to hidden motion triggers. But no one has ever found the original source code. Every copy traces back to the same recovered hard drive from Daniel's apartment. The metadata shows one consistent anomaly. The author tag never says unknown. It says she. If you pause the file during playback, the image doesn't freeze. Her eyes still follow the viewer. And somewhere in that faint audio layer, under the static, you can hear breathing, not from the recording, but from behind you. If these stories kept you looking over your shoulder, you've already stepped too close. Darkness doesn't fade, it follows. So before you turn off the lights, hit subscribe and tell us which story haunted you most. Because next time the camera might be watching you.